Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Christian. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, good day. Wherever you are, whenever you're seeing this, I hope you are good. So guys, today we're going to be doing a video all about bonding with a new tarot deck. This can also be used for bonding with oracle decks. You can also use it, and tweak it a little bit to bond with, crystals or any other type of spiritual, tools that you may be using. But specifically, we're going to be talking about bonding with a tarot deck. You guys know that I have been using oracle decks exclusively for about a year. I took a little bit of time off from using tarot. I basically just felt called to stop using tarot. I was using oracle cards exclusively in my readings and felt like it was just giving me a chance to use my gifts a little bit more, because I feel like the messages with tarot can be very, direct, very verbatim. I feel like with tarot, you don't really have to, I used to feel like you didn't really have to use your abilities too much because the messages were so clear. So I felt like with oracle readings, when you have just a few pieces of the puzzle, it kind of helps strengthen your gifts and helps you connect, the pieces together, helps you pay attention to more things, helps you just be more aware in the sessions and different things like that, because you're not just going to get an obvious message like you do with tarot. So I definitely feel using oracle readings, exclusively definitely changed how I feel about readings and changed how I do readings and things like that. So I was very excited to bring some tarot cards back into the fold, and I have been loving working with this deck. I wasn't sure how I was going to like this deck because this is a really popular deck, and usually the popular viral decks I just kind of stray away from. But this is a really, really beautiful deck. I really enjoy working with it. And maybe you should check it out. Who knows? But there's a lot of really great decks out there. And I always recommend, if you can, going to a spiritual shop in your area, going to a store and picking out a deck. You can literally look up spiritual shops near me. There are certain stores, on Etsy, of course, on Amazon, where you can buy decks. But I think when you're looking to connect with the deck, sometimes it can be easier for one to just call out at you, at a store, instead of kind of going through photos online and kind of catching the vibe. Sometimes you can go through photos online, or, you'll see a deck online that really calls to you and you're like, you know what, I want to work with those cards. But it's always a good idea to go to a shop in your area if you can, if they're available, and get some cards that way, because when you're working with any spiritual tool, the connection between the item and yourself, the item and your energy, is really, really important. And a lot of people have a lot of different decks that don't work, or they feel like they can't read with them. And it's just because it just might not be the right tool for them. So that's definitely something that we want to bear in mind, having the right tool. The current deck that I'm going to be working with today and just kind of showing you guys around, using it as an example, and the deck I've been using, the Ethereal Visions Illuminated Tarot deck. This is a really, really beautiful, gorgeous tarot deck. I'm going to see if I can look in my mirror to make sure you guys can see this. So she is really, really beautiful, pastel colors, kind of like a muted, not necessarily a muted color palette. There are some colors here, but the saturation is turned down a little bit, so I guess muted would be the correct word. But this is a very, very beautiful deck. I love her. There's also an expanded guidebook, which basically, of course, goes through everything that you'll basically go through as you're, reading your different cards and your different readings. It'll go through the meanings of everything, and it's all color in here to tell you the tea. I literally keep this guidebook in here. I really have loved, using the guidebook as I go throughout my deck. So I've had this deck for a few weeks now. I don't know if it's been a month, maybe, I'm not sure, but I've had this deck for a few weeks now. When I first got this deck, I basically did what I usually do. Take some time to go through the deck one card at a time, looking at each card and basically looking at the symbolism on each card, the design of each card, what it says to me, what it speaks to me, what it makes me feel. If there's certain elements on the card that really, really stand out to me. Like, let me see if there's a card in particular. So this card, the Four of Pentacles, the Four of Pentacles represents security in your finances, feeling very secure, feeling like you are capable of making responsible choices, having a good savings, investing in the right spaces. This person is very, very beautifully dressed. They're balancing themselves on these two pentacles, and they have two more pentacles up here. So I feel, this has been giving me the energy of not being so restrictive with your finances, but being in a space of flow because of that security that you have, achieving a space of flow so we don't feel so restrictive to where we can't let money out. So typically the Four of Pentacles to me kind of feels restrictive. It feels like we're really, really saving. We're on a tight budget. But in this deck, it represents and gives me the energy of finding more of a flow with that security in those finances. So I feel like each card, of course, the meanings are going to be the same. The Page of Cups is going to be the Page of Cups in any tarot deck. But I do think the different decks that you use will represent something different based on the imagery. It'll make you feel something different. It'll call something different to your mind, like a story or a piece of advice or something like that. And I think that's the whole point of, different decks. If that was the case, if every card meant exactly the same thing, then there would only be one deck, right? So I think different cards with different imagery, different vibes to the cards and to the artwork can definitely just come across in different ways. So the first thing I always do when I get a new deck is I go buy the deck card at a time. There's about 72 cards in a tarot deck. You may have 78 or 75 cards if there's extra cards added in your deck. If there are extra cards in your deck, they'll always be outlined in the guidebook. So keep hold of your guidebooks that you get when you get your cards. I've basically thrown all of my guidebooks away, and that's fine. But just keep the guidebooks. I really love referring to my guidebooks. I didn't want to use them as a crutch when I first started reading 5 years ago, but I really do love using my guidebooks, especially as I work with more expressive cards, because whoever designed the card designed it with a specific intention in mind. So all of that goes into the reading whenever you're, relaying that message. But yes, I go through card at a time, take some time to look, at what I'm getting. If you're a beginner, this will be a really good time to take notes. It will be good time to kind of write down, body language, different colors. If you see a sun, if you see a flower, if you see, children, older people, younger people, families, babies, money, grapes, trees, water. Different things that you may see on cards that will, show you different things, bring different things to your attention. So it is good, if you're a beginner or if you're just the type of person to take notes, to take some notes as you're going through your deck. It's a way to study the deck. It's also a way to see how this makes you feel. Also, when you're first using a deck, whenever you're using a deck or a spiritual tool, you always want to make sure your energy and your mind is right before you step into it. If you can't do that throughout the course of your life with the deck, because mind you, you get this deck, you may need to come to this deck when you're full of tears, or come to this deck when you're frustrated, when you have different things going on. So we can't always, come and seek guidance in a space where we feel 100% clear. But I think in the beginning, working with your deck, it is important to be as clear as you can in those spaces, because you're starting the beginning of that relationship. And if you're just now starting to read a certain deck and get familiar with the deck's energy, and you've been feeling anxious or you've been dealing with a lot, you can definitely begin to associate the messages and the things that you're picking up on because, with the things you've been experiencing. So it is good when you're working with a deck in the beginning, of course, always, but specifically in the beginning, you want to make sure before you work with your deck, you have time, you're not rushing, you have the notes that you need, you maybe light a little incense, you maybe light a little candle, you pray over yourself, you ask that you have an open heart and mind, that you're protected from any dark energies, you connect with your source of power, you connect with your source of knowledge, and just get in a really, really good headspace. Also, you guys know I offer services, so this deck has been the only deck that I've been using exclusively. I usually never do that with the deck. I always add in one deck with extra things, but this has been the only deck I've been using. I haven't used any other oracle cards with this deck. I definitely think that's heightened my connection with this deck, using it for everything. Also, I've been traveling a lot. This deck always comes with me. I always, take this deck out, pull a couple of cards, do some shuffling whenever I am out and about. And it really is, a great deck because it's the only deck I have to travel with. Usually I'll travel with 2 or 3 decks. So just being able to travel with one makes a very big difference. So I've just been committed to using her. When I'm on the road, when I'm out and about, this is the deck that I'm going to go with. I also have been being very intentional about how I shuffle these cards. It's been a while since I've gotten a new deck and really kind of primed myself to work with the deck. So I am intentional about how I shuffle. I do make sure that I don't shuffle willy-nilly. I've made sure I kept my guidebook. I try to keep my cards very neat. And, just try to really, really take care of them and love on them. My older cards are very, very worn around the edges. I'm sure this, deck will end up being very loved on. But I do, like to be intentional with how I use my cards, where I set them down and different things like that. Something else that you could do, like I mentioned, I work with these cards on a pretty regular basis because I do services and readings for people. But if you aren't going to be doing that, you definitely want to pull out your deck a couple of times a week. I would say every 3 days, every other day if you want to, even every day. If you want to pull a card every day, take some time to read and see what the guidebook has to say about that card. That could be a good way to kind of learn your deck in a couple of months if that's what you wanted to do. It's not really about how long it takes you to learn your deck and get familiar with your cards. You may feel like you are an expert when you pick up that deck for the first time, and you may feel like a deck never connects with you. There are some decks that I have that I haven't ever reached for or pulled for in readings for other people, for myself, or anything, just because I never really, they never really stood out for me in my mind. So I do think that, it is important to just kind of see, if you feel called to work with the deck, if you feel called to, get into some questions, if you have in the back of your mind that this is going to be a good pathway for you, then that is going to be something good. Also, when you are working with any type of cards, it's only going to be a magnification of what you already feel in your mind in terms of your own discernment, God's way of connecting with you and communicating with you. So that is always a good place to start. You always want to make sure that when you're trying to read cards, you're able to read your intuition well and connect with God well and protect your energy and clear your energy. You may want to do some chakra work. You may want to do some meditation. You may want to do some releasing work before you start working with the new deck of cards. There may be certain things that you may want to do to step into it with a good energy and an open mindset. So definitely keep that in mind. I still have a tarot course available. I'll always have a tarot course available. You guys know I love tarot and love teaching people about tarot. And, for me, tarot is more than just these tools. Like I mentioned, I've stopped using tarot for a year. I'm back on it. I think that tarot and, any gifts that we use, or any tools that we use rather, is really just about bringing, a different energy to your intuition, in the sense of bringing it to the physical, making it plain, putting it in front of you. It's also a great way to connect with others. I feel like I've been able to connect with a lot of people through tarot. Tarot is something that can open your mind intuitively, and you don't even need these cards anymore, because we don't need these cards. You do not need these. If you are gifted, then you're gifted. If you have sight, if you have claircognizance, if you have very strong discernment, if you have a strong intuition, you don't need cards or anything. All you need to do, honestly, is pray, and the message will come to you. All this is a tool, and the tool is only going to work as well as you're able to work your own intuition. So after doing several different, tarot group classes, I created a self-led tarot course. It's a bunch of YouTube videos, 3 hours total of educational videos, a tarot guide along with it that basically gives you the full rundown of how to read tarot, the major arcana, the minor arcana, all different types of, tips and tricks about how to work with the cards, different candle work that you can do to work with your intuition, all kinds of different things to basically help you reading, from the prayer to the protection to what tarot is and isn't, to all of those things, the history of tarot. Literally everything is in the course. So I would definitely recommend, stepping into that. If you're not familiar with tarot at all, if you are just picking up a card, or picking up a deck and you really want to make a connection, I think taking a course, or just, taking that approach where you're prioritizing your mental, your intuition, the connection between you and God, that's going to be a great way to step into it. Because if you don't have the right mindset, you can pull a bunch of stuff that scares you. Every time you pull the death card or the devil, you'll be scared, thinking that somebody about to come and get you. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are, it's a responsibility when you're saying, I'm ready for messages, because if you aren't protected, you don't know what's going to come through. A lot of people have talked about they used to do tarot and do yoga and do sound bowls, and they were seeing demons in the night and all kind of stuff. I'm not saying that didn't happen. It never happened to me, because I ain't never did nothing with no shiesty intentions. And I'm not saying that people do things with shiesty intentions and then they get scared. But what I am saying is, if you do things and you're not being led by God to those things, if you do things without consorting with God, without making sure your mind is in a safe space, you can walk outside and see a demon. You could pour a cup of coffee and see a demon right there. It could be anything where you'll be presented with the things that you're running from and the issues that you have. Working with spiritual tools only heightens it. It only heightens it. So I would definitely say you want to, of course, I probably should have said this in the beginning, but you want to make sure that you get your mind right, that you get your energy right, that you're working with these cards, from a space of, integrity, from a space of humility, from a space of being open heart, open mind. I think it's also great to read for yourself a lot in the beginning. I used to pull 40 card spreads for myself when I first started, and I won't hesitate to pull a 40 card spread right now and get into it. But it's always good to just be ready to confront whatever pops up, to not be afraid to ask questions, to continue to pray, to continue to do protection work. But yes, you know, there's a lot that goes into using a tool, and it is a very, very powerful tool to have. You can always go to your tools, just like you can always pray. You can always pull a card that'll give you what you need, because the more you use it, the more it'll be able to, you know, connect with you. And just like, you know, carrying a rosary will make you feel protected or make you feel safe, or, you know, you can open that scripture in the Bible and it'll give you exactly what you need. There's no difference from saying that you want anything to be a vessel or a channel that, you know, God uses to send you messages. So I think it's very, very key to keep that in mind when you're trying to work with a new deck. But I think it's, you know, as simple as using the deck regularly, taking the time to go through the symbolism, go through the cards, figuring out what those things are saying to you, figuring out how the cards are communicating with you. I also think it's important to be patient with yourself, you know, as you're working with your cards and as you're working to understand, you know, how things are communicating or how your gifts are going to be evolving. Be patient with yourself. Don't rush. And, you know, if you're a beginner, don't rush into doing readings for people. Don't rush into doing readings for your friends or anything. See it as a space for you to get connected with you. And even before I started using this deck in readings, you know, I believe the first reading I ever did with this deck, it was a free reading that I did for one of my homegirls for her birthday. So if I'm using a new deck, I do like to maybe read for myself, do a couple of free readings, you know, just kind of feel the energy out. I'm not going to pop open a fresh deck and do a paid reading for somebody immediately. And that's just because, you know, the tools aren't there just for you to profit off of. They're not there just for you to look into something. They're not there just for you to say, does this man love me? You know, they're there for a lot of other things. They're there for exchanges of energy. They're there for, you know, encouragement. They're there to, you know, help guide you from point A to point B whenever you can't see clearly, because whatever is blocking you, it's there to give you an insight on what God's trying to tell you when you're distracted or, you know, discouraged or confused by certain things. So it's something that you want to, you know, respect. It's not something that you want to just see as just working for you, or this is going to tell you what you want. Like you don't know what you're going to see. You don't know what it is. And I always tell people, don't be mad at me, be mad at the Lord. He the one that sent the message. I'm just the messenger. But working with the tools, working with that telephone that you're using to connect with those messages is key. So yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this little video spiel about connecting with a new tarot deck. I guess I can pull a card for us just to kind of wrap up this video. If you guys have any questions about connecting with the tarot deck, you can definitely let me know down below. I have a lot of different videos. The Queen of Swords, love she, a symbol of, you know, advancements in intelligence and education, a symbol of someone that trusts their judgment, that is very wise, you know, someone that is, you know, tapped in mentally, very, very mentally, very, very highly educated. You know, this is the boss, this is the CEO, the head honcho. So yes, guys, I thank you for being here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Like I mentioned, I do have other videos about tarot, all types of videos about tarot on my page. I've been reading and working with tarot cards for 5 years, so definitely get into it. As always, you guys can book sessions with me. You can also book my tarot course to learn how to read tarot from me. But I love you guys. I appreciate y'all. Let me know how you guys feel about this video. I hope you found it beneficial, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys. Bless.